Whenever a park builds a new coaster, they always have to figure out one thing: marketing. Trying to appeal to a much wider audience by making a ride look a lot better than it may actually be. The most popular way of marketing a coaster is attaching a bunch of records to it to make the ride look a lot more appealing. Something that looks like an experience that you can only get from a certain park, when in truth, that's probably not the case. Most records today are a lot more gimmicky, mediocre, don't make a lot of sense. For example, look at 2019's Max Force. That coaster has 3 records. One is pretty standard, fastest accelerating coaster in North America. The other 2 get pretty strange. Tallest double inversion, fastest inversion. Most of you have no idea what those were prior to Max Force. And yeah, I get it's a lot more difficult for a park to break the record for tallest, steepest, fastest, longest. These records have been hard to reach for years, but that leads to the question, will we ever see some of these records be broken again? I mean, it's been a long time. Kingda Ka's hold the record for tallest coaster in the world for 15 years. And we have yet to see a coaster that can at least challenge Kingda Ka. So on G.A.C. Top 10, I want to look at the top 10 roller coaster records that may never be broken, or at least in the next 50 years or so. Now, one thing I need to point out, I'm not going to be considering Falcon's Flight at all for this list. I'm completely disregarding that ride. If it does happen, it will be the tallest, fastest, longest coaster in existence. However, the entire idea of Falcon's Flight is just so unrealistic that I can't even think that it's ever going to happen. All we have is the one video that doesn't give us much of an idea of how the ride is actually going to be like. All we do know is that it's vaguely promising us 3 records, and one of them is that it's going to be 600 feet, maybe. I am completely skeptical about Six Flags Qiddiya and Falcon's Flight until we see like some plans or the project actually breaks ground. I'm not going to emphasize the idea of Falcon's Flight until we get some kind of confirmation. Number 10, most inversions. In 2013, Alton Towers didn't want to just break the record for most inversions on any coaster. They wanted to destroy it. Previously, the record for most inversions was held by a number of different coasters, specifically the Intamin Model 10 inversion coaster, which, you guessed it, has 10 inversions. The record has been tied since 2002 when Thorpe Park built Colossus. Then when Alton Towers built the Smiler, they beat it by 4 more inversions for a total of 14. The entire point of the Smiler is having as many inversions as possible in the most compact space. The ride is jam-packed with corkscrews, Immelmans, dive loops, has a sea serpent roll, sidewinder, just each inversion jam-packed one after another. Now, why I don't think this record's gonna be broken anytime soon is because today's day and age, most roller coasters are not striving for inversions anymore. Companies like Rocky Mountain Construction, all their rides are heavily based on airtime, where the idea of going upside down is kind of an afterthought. Even Intamin's taking an RMC approach by incorporating more elements that are heavily inspired by RMC for all their new roller coasters. Even today, the only new coaster that came close to breaking the Smiler's record is Steel Curtain at Kennywood, and that ride only has 9 inversions when there's been 10 inversion coasters since 2002, so clearly the motivation for breaking the Smiler's record is pretty scarce. Another small thing to keep in mind is the reputation the Smiler has back in 2015 when they had an unfortunate incident. Of course, that was operator error, but when parks look at that ride and they wanted to build a coaster like the Smiler, a park is just going to focus on the incident and not really care how it happened. No matter what, the Smiler is always going to have a reputation for what happened back in 2015. Number 9, tallest traditional Giga. At the turn of the millennium, Cedar Point created the term Giga coaster, which is any ride between 300 and 399 feet. Millenium Force was the tallest coaster in the world when it first opened, until a few months later when Steel Dragon 2000 took the record by a mere 8 feet. But more on that ride later in the video. After those 2 rides, Cedar Fair built I-305 at King's Dominion in 2010, Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland 2012, which was the first ever B&M Giga, then 2015, Fury 325, and Orion in 2020, which is the newest Giga coaster up to date. Now, why I'm saying traditional Giga coaster over just the term Giga, because if I refer to tallest Giga, I would be talking about Red Force, which would be the tallest Giga coaster, but if I'm talking about traditional, it would be any Giga with a lift hill, because Red Force is over 367 feet, so it would be the tallest Giga, even if it does look like just a scaled down strata. Now, I don't think any ride in the future is gonna break Fury's record, is because I just don't know what park's gonna buy another Giga. I mean, Cedar Fair owns all of them besides Red Force and Steel Dragon, and the price of these on the market are pretty ridiculous. Both Fury and Orion cost $30 million, and you could say Orion's a bit smaller than Fury. The ride's only 287 feet. It just barely qualifies as a Giga if it wasn't for the 300-foot drop. Besides that fact, Orion's over 1,000 feet shorter than Fury, so it just goes for show B&M and Intamin's prices are too luxurious for most companies. And the amount these coasters cost keep inflating. Cedar Fair had to compensate for Orion, so they wouldn't go over a $30 million budget. I just don't know what park's gonna buy one. Energylandia? No, I don't see it. Even though they have a larger budget from the government, it's just not gonna happen. There would have to be another company to offer a Giga besides B&M or Intamin. RMC, probably the right contender. Their hybrid coasters could probably hit that height. Their future RMC Raptors and T-Rexes definitely can. Plus, another thing to keep in mind, the Giga height record is limited. A Giga can only be 399 feet. If it goes over that, then it's in strata territory. So technically, there is a limit for how high a Giga can be. Number 8, fastest wooden coaster. Dollywood in 2016 built the fastest wooden coaster in the world at 73 miles an hour. Only 2 years after Goliath at Six Flags Great America held the record by beating it by 1 mile an hour. Now, Lightning Rod is the current fastest wooden coaster in the world, but in truth, there is a coaster that was faster than Lightning Rod. However, the ride is not around anymore. It is Son of Beast at Kings Island. The coaster went 78.4 miles an hour, which is 5 more than Lightning Rod, so technically, the record for fastest wooden coaster in the world hasn't been broken since the year 2000. Now, why I don't think the record's gonna be broken is because just look at Son of Beast and Lightning Rod. Those coasters are and were so problematic. Son of Beast only lasted 9 years. Lightning Rod, they're still having problems with their LSM lift hill. No park's gonna want to take on a headache like those two coasters. Launches on wooden coasters still haven't been perfected, and the faster a coaster goes, the more force it's gonna have to retain, and wood, by no surprise, is a lot weaker than steel. Wood can only withstand so much force until eventually it just can't take it anymore. Number 7, tallest invert. Busch Gardens in Williamsburg has some pretty amazing coasters. Notably some of their B&Ms. They got Griffin, their dive coaster, Apollo's Chariot, the first ever B&M Hyper, and Alpengeist, the tallest inverted coaster built by B&M. Just shy of 200 feet at 195, this is the tallest inverted coaster to date. But it was built in 1997, during the peak time when B&M inverts were a huge trend, but now they're like, parks don't have a desire to buy them. B&M almost completely saturated the market with these, so no one's buying an invert because most parks already have one, or a park is in close proximity of one that already has an invert either by Vekoma, B&M, or some other company. Again, the ride was built in 1997 and no other invert even comes close to 195 feet. Even the newest invert after 6 years from Banshee, Monster, going to Gronalund, that ride's only 111 feet, so it's not much taller from a Batman clone. And after Monster, so what's next? Is another park gonna buy an invert? Is Monster the last one? And even if another amusement park buys one, it's likely not gonna be taller than Alpengeist. Number 6, fastest roller coaster. Okay, this record is pretty big. The fastest roller coaster in the world. Formula Rosa at Ferrari World goes over 149 miles an hour. Nearly 150 miles an hour in 4.9 seconds. Only Intamin and SNS for one of their coasters are able to reach 100 miles an hour. This coaster only opened 10 years ago in 2010. So why do I think there'll never be a coaster faster than Formula Rosa? Well, first of all, we have to look at the launch system that Formula Rosa uses, because Formula Rosa has a hydraulic launch. And if you didn't know, Intamin, they discontinued this launch system, which is kind of a big deal for these high-speed rides that Intamin makes, because every coaster that Intamin has over 100 miles an hour uses a hydraulic launch, besides Red Force and Superman. So if Intamin doesn't use this launch anymore, which is able to get the ride up to these high speeds, nearly 150 miles an hour, how can a company like this break the record? I mean, LSM launches, they probably can't reach these speeds. Red Force is the fastest LSM launch, and that only reaches 111, and it's a lot more gradual. I'm not sure they could beat the speed record with a chain lift, just because I think they need more mechanical energy versus the force of gravity. If a manufacturer wanted the coaster to completely rely on gravity, I would imagine it would need to be really high. I mean, Top Thrill Dragster's 420 feet, but when it goes over the drop, it only reaches about 100 miles an hour, compared to its advertised speed of 120 that it only achieves on the launch. A coaster would need to go 500-600 plus feet or so, I'm not sure about that. Although the point I'm trying to make is everything has their limit. Air compressed launches, LSM launches, hydraulic launches, they all have a breaking point, and I don't think we have the technology so far to actually go past Formula Rosa's speed. We just gotta wait until the technology catches up to our ambition. Number 5, largest dueling coaster. So when I found the largest dueling coaster in the world, to my surprise, this record has been intact for over 40 years. Yeah, that old wooden coaster in the back of Great America that only people in Chicago consider a classic is actually the largest dueling coaster in the world. When I looked at the other dueling coasters, none of them compared to American Eagle. All 3 dueling dragon coasters, even the one that's defunct, don't compare to American Eagle's length. Both sides of American Eagle is 4,650 feet. That's a combined track length of 9,300 feet. Why won't the record be broken? Well, once again, back to expenses. It's basically building 2 roller coasters for 1 year. The last dueling coaster was Dueling Dragons at Guangzhou Scenic Land, and each side is only half of one side of American Eagle, only 2,600 feet, with the red side being a little longer. Even though American Eagle has more track than any ride, people look down upon this coaster and even wish for it to be RMC'd. I do not personally think it's gonna be RMC'd. If you want to know more about that, I made an entire video devoted to it. I will link that in the iCard above. Number 4, longest roller coaster. Again, going back to the turn of the millennium, Nagashima Spaland opened Steel Dragon 2000. There is no other coaster longer than 8,133.2 feet. And if you can't tell, I am emphasizing the hell out of this track length. This ride cracks 8,000 feet when only a small handful of coasters even break a mile. Imagine the $52 million that went into Steel Dragon. A park would have to have some serious dedication to beat this record. I mean, the second longest coaster in the world, the Ultimate at Lightwater Valley in the UK, that ride's over 7,400 feet long, and the entire ride, it's basically just hugging the ground, traversing through curves and straight track. Even back in 1991, when the Ultimate first opened, the park said they would always just add on to it so no other roller coaster can beat it. Clearly, that didn't pan out. Number 3, largest stand-up. Okay, this record was just handed to me. There is not going to be another stand-up coaster. B&M stopped producing them, parks stopped buying them. Any stand-up that's left, they're being converted to a floorless or they're being scrapped entirely. So Riddler's Revenge at Magic Mountain is going to be the largest stand-up coaster to date, and that coaster may not last that long. However, there are 2 records still on the list, and I do think they're a lot more difficult to break than having a stand-up larger than Riddler. Number 2, fastest accelerating coaster. I feel like I can't stop talking about Dodonpa on this channel, but I can't blame myself. This ride is incredible just for the one signature element. A launch to 111.8 miles per hour in 1.56 seconds. Only S&S was able to do this with their air thrust model, starting off with Hypersonic XLC, which we all know what happened to that ride, then Dodonpa. Nothing on land can accelerate that quickly. The only coaster that can beat Dodonpa is Dodonpa. In 2017, the park increased the speed by 4 miles an hour, so it went 107 to 111, and then made it accelerate in an even shorter amount of time. 1.8 seconds to 1.56 seconds. Don't doubt me when I say only Dodonpa can break its own record. Number 1, highest G-force. Going all the way to the bottom of Africa, at Gold Reef City, is Tower of Terror. This 2001 coaster that was made by some manufacturer that is undisclosed is a coaster with a 90-degree drop into a tunnel, where in one point of time the ride featured 6.3 G's of force. Of course, today the coaster does not nearly exert that much G-force on the riders. However, I have to say this roller coaster does not hold the record for highest G-force. The real record holder lies in Brooklyn, New York, all the way back during the dawn of roller coasters in 1895. The Flip Flap Railway, a coaster that only had one element, a 25-foot loop, but exerted over 12 G's of force. That is over 12 times your body weight pushing down on you while you're going through that one vertical loop. And in medical terms, this ride was lethal. Blackouts, broken bones, whiplash, these are all possible scenarios for people who rode the Flip Flap Railway. Even in today's standards for roller coasters, any ride that exerts 5 G's of force, that is pushing the limit. There is no doubt in my mind that the Flip Flap Railway will remain the record holder for the most G-force. So that is my top 10 list on roller coaster records that may never be broken, or at least in the near or distant future. And I just want to mention, it's recently been over 1 year since I started this channel. Over 1 year ago, I started Great American Coasters from nothing, and we nearly have 4,000 subscribers. So I just want to say thank you to all of you that subscribe, view, watch my videos every single week. And if you're not a subscriber yet, I would really appreciate it if you hit my logo right there. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for watching.